Hello, I'm Dan Gibson, and this is another video in the series Archaeology and Islam. In this video, I would like to introduce you to an online tool that illustrates the various Islamic places that I have identified in and around the city of Petra. But before we do this, please note that almost all of the names for places and monuments in Petra today are not ancient names. The names of places in and around Petra are mostly names that have developed for the last few hundred years, while Petra was a hidden and forgotten place to the rest of the world. Monuments like the Treasury get their name from people who thought that the top of it contained a hidden treasure. So many of the early explorers and travelers used guns to shoot at it to try to break it open so that the treasure would fall out. It only ended up in damaging the facade. The name Qasr al-Bint goes back a ways in history, but it's not the original name of the structure. That has been lost to us. One of the early names that seems to have survived is Al-Baidha, but this is the name of the village north of Petra, not in Petra itself. Somehow that village maintained its original names, as have some others. But names in Petra, many of them are descriptive, like the palace tomb, the Corinthian tomb, the urn tomb, the Roman soldier's tomb, and the Great Temple, and many more. These are descriptive names that have been put onto these tombs and monuments. They are not the original names. Even the names of the mountains have been lost to us, and today we only have the names that visitors gave it or that the local Bedouin have used, and those Bedouin tribes have changed over time. For instance, the mountain with Aaron's tomb on top of it is known today as Jebel Haron, but that's not the ancient name. That has been lost to us. The names of some places, like Moses Spring, seems to have been given after someone commented that it was like the rock that Moses struck and the water came out. So it quickly became known as Ain al-Musa, the Springs of Moses. The original name was lost. In fact, for many centuries, the entire city of Petra was lost, except to some local people who lived there, and for many they considered it an ancient graveyard. So over the years, I have been studying the Qibla direction of all of the Muslim mosques of the first centuries of Islam. From my study, I have determined that the ancient city of Petra was the original holy city of Islam. Please use the online tool, the Qibla tool, to check out the mosques of the first 2 centuries of Islam, and note that all of the original Qiblas faced Petra in Jordan. Then when we come to Petra itself, we can find many more indicators that Petra is the place that the early Muslims spoke of by looking at the descriptions. Please remember that the name Petra itself is a modern name. It was given to the city by the Romans, and so the West has been using this Roman name, but the city of Petra had names, many different names and descriptors down through history. Originally, it was Mount Seir. Later, it was known as Rakim. It was also known as the Rock, that is Petra in Greek, and Hijr in Arabic. In fact, there are 2 famous great rocks, Sela and Petra. They're different. And so the region was known as Petrea, the place of the 2 rocks. The Roman province was called Arabia Petrea, and it was managed from the city of Basra in Syria, which was in the northern part of the Arabian province. Petra was also known to the Romans as Hadrian's Petra, as he is the one who first coined the term. The Romans also called it the Imperial colony Antoniana, and the Roman Emperor Blagabalus, around 220 AD, bestowed the title Mother of All Settlements, or Mother of All Cities, on Petra. In Arabic, it was Qurra. Others called it the Blessed City, or the Noble City. These tombs are all used in Greek and are attested in the Petra scrolls. The name Mecca seems to have been used at the time of Abraham as the name of the valley before it was settled by various tribes. And many years later, around 600 AD, A popular name for the city was Mecca. This is attested by Thomas Arts Rooney, who was a contemporary of Al-Tabri, and he tells us that Mecca, the Mecca, was in Arabia Petrea. So my conclusion is that the city had many names, titles, and descriptions over the centuries. When we come to Islamic literature, the name Mecca is used for both locations. For example, some descriptions of early Mecca tell us that the Kaaba was built near the corner of the Kaaba compound, and the Hijr wall went around the Kaaba, and we can clearly see this in Petrea, where the Kaaba is in the corner of the compound, the Hijr wall goes around the compound, and then curves around the grave of Ishmael. Some years later, in Mecca in Saudi Arabia, Ibn Zubair moved the Black Rock from Petra to Mecca, and he attached the Hijr wall to the Kaaba structure. That's in history. After this, Caliph Abdul al-Malik, he moved the Kaaba building into the center of the compound, not in the corner. We can see this in the Kaaba in Mecca. In Islamic literature, both places are called Mecca, and this is what has confused people all down through history. So today, when people ask me to show them the name Petra in the Quran, all I can do is point them to some of the other names of Petra, including Qurra, mother of all settlements, the Blessed City, Becca, even the name Mecca. The early Muslims did not use the Roman name, which was given some 400 years earlier. So in this video, we are going to go around the area of Petra, and we're going to look at places that correspond to the ancient descriptions. For instance, we are told that there was a place outside of the Haram area where Muhammad would wash himself before going into the Masjid al-Haram. We are told that he liked to stay at this spot, and it was known as Jiranah, and there was a spring of water there. This spring was known as Al-Aqsa. So, when we start the Petra tool, we'll see a guide in the left corner, and we can click through. The first place we're going to come to is Al-Aqsa in Jiranah, and we'll see a picture, and we can click on it and go through, and we can read the descriptions. Okay, let's click on the link. It's at the bottom of the video, and you can find it. You can do it now, or you can do it later. Now remember that this tool is under development, so there may be some small changes and additions over the coming months. Now, first, please allow time for the program to load. I think it works best on a desktop computer or on a TV screen. It's very difficult to see it on a cell phone. Second, note that this link will take you away from where you were to this special program inside of Google Earth. Third, close the pop-up window that says Create Collaborative Maps. That link is inviting you to make your own maps, but here we want to examine the map that has already been made. Now, using the menu items on the bottom, in the bottom left there, you can systematically walk through each of the places, or you can click on the blue markers on the map itself. As I said, the walkthrough starts with Al-Aqsa in Jiranah on the outskirts of Petra, and it takes us along the pilgrimage route into the city. From there, you can explore other places along the way as I have identified them, or else you can just go wander around and look for yourself. For each of the locations, I have tried to include a photograph, a quote from ancient Islamic sources, if possible. So, what are some of the places? Well, from Al-Aqsa in Jiranah, we move on to Al-Adna. This was a place for the women to wash before starting the pilgrimage. Aisha used to start her pilgrimage from this point. It's closer to Masjid al-Haram, and the women would wash here before starting the pilgrimage. The men would either meet them here and go on together, or groups of women would walk together. The third place is a map of the first day of the pilgrimage. The yellow line follows the 7 to 8 kilometer walk into the city, around the Kaaba, and then out down to Mina. You can drag the map around to see where the route went if you want. The fourth place on our tour is the sacred rocks that mark the entrance to the sacred area. Click through the photographs and then read the sources that describe the borders to the sacred area. Note that there are around 20 of these large square stones all around the city, especially at the entrances that marked out the sacred area. If you know of another quote from the Quran or the Hadiths or one of the histories that would fit any one of these places, and I have not included it, please let me know. I'd love to include it on the map. Place number 5 points out a place along the route that was important to the polytheists. It was a tomb of a Nabatean merchant family. It has Egyptian-like construction on the upper tomb and Greek-like decoration on the lower dining hall. There are 2 photos of the dam next. First, another stone marking the boundary of Masjid al-Haram. Then on the left, the dam, and this was important to divert floodwaters from going into the Thaniya and maybe going down into the city and making damage. It diverted the water through a short tunnel carved into the rocks and takes it away up to the north. Number 7 takes us into the Thaniya, or the crack through the mountains. Now, I'm not going to take you through all of the places. There are over 50 of them. But I invite you to come back to this tool again and again to check these early sites. I will be posting more of them and updating them and the descriptions to help you see Petra through new eyes. I believe that the original pilgrimage was here, and that all of the important places that are supposed to be around Mecca in Saudi Arabia were all originally here in Petra. When the Black Stone and the Kaaba were moved to Saudi, people began to look for places around them that seemed to fit the ancient descriptions. But in this tool, you can examine what I think were the original places. It's all here. Zamzam, the Cave of Hira, the Kaaba, Mount Arafat, the Plains of Arafat, Mina, the temples of Dushera Hubal and of Al-Aqsa, even the huge place that was leveled out for the Jumrat, or the stoning of the pillar. You can find Muzdalifah and all of the places named on the earlier records. And alongside of them are places that were important to the polytheists, and even some places that were important to the small population of Christians that inhabited this site during the lifetime of Muhammad. Please enjoy this tool. I hope it's helpful to you. I'm Dan Gibson, and this is another video in the series Archaeology and Islam.